Hello, everybody. My name is Dean of the InkGuild, and before today's episode starts, I just want to give a quick preamble. If you've been keeping up with our channel, you can kind of notice that episodes have been kind of sparing lately, and that's mainly just because a lot of us have been busy. In particular, I have been very busy because of school, and as a result, I couldn't pump out videos as frequently as I did for the previous season. So just wanted to clarify that in case there was any kind of confusion with upload dates and whatever. But also to address something that I think might be a little bit obvious by now, with the shorthand series, because they're meant to recap, because they're meant to recap some of the highlights for each episode. It was kind of hard to do that with the final two episodes of season 2, sorry. That in where Alex, Gabe, and I were talking about our respective magic systems and gods of myths. It was kind of hard to boil down such long episodes into less than 30 minutes. So I think those will not be getting a shorthand. I think I more or less might just keep them as is. As well as addressing any other potential plans with the shorthand series moving forward. But I think, there's too much information that I think that you can't really condense down in 30 minutes, especially when we're talking about our magic systems and gods and myths, which is full of lore and information that you don't want to miss, basically. But I think aside from that, we have the final two episodes of season 3 coming out this week. So today you'll be treated with Gabe and I talking about our writing scenes, and I think by talking about, it's more or less just sharing our writing scenes, or at least works in progress. So also keep that in mind. These aren't final copies. And the season will conclude on Friday when we release episode 36, which is writing dialogue, which is also going to be Gabe and I sharing our works in progress. By this point, most of us had been super busy, so unfortunately it was only Gabe and I that were able to speak, but that doesn't really change the quality of what we bring to the table, so hope you enjoy that. And I think, that's pretty much it for this little preamble. So with all that being said, all of our social media is down in the description below, both individually and as the Ink Guild. Thanks for bearing with us, everybody, and enjoy today's episode. I'll start recording now then. Oh shit, we need an intro.
I'm sure one will come to us if you just wait. You cuck. There it is.
You motherfucker, I couldn't have come up with that better.
And ladies and gentlemen, it's just that easy.
They're an important part of people's breakfast.
Here's the thing about sex in fiction. You don't need to have a fucking sex scene.
I can't stand those books. They make me so mad.
I can't replace a fire alarm on my own.
Sing your morning routine.
Lemonade across my bed.
An unexpected pregnancy. Now David just like who's your mommy?
Hello, everybody. My name is Dean, and welcome back to the InkGuild Podcast. Tonight, I'm joined by Gabe.
Hello.
And Brooke.
Ominous voice.
All right. Very ominous. Anyway, as the second last episode of the season, tonight, Gabe and I are going to be sharing our action scenes. It's going to be a two-part season finale, like how we've been doing with seasons 1 and 2. This time we're going to be sharing excerpts. We're going to be sharing excerpts for this episode and for Friday's upload, basically. The first part of that is action scenes. So basically, how tonight's going to work is that Gabe and I will be sharing excerpts from my story, or excerpts from our story, like I had said. We have a word limit for the total amount of words that we need for our excerpts. So I had said that we can either share mini excerpts or one long excerpt, so long as it doesn't surpass 1,700 or 1,750 words. And that's only why it's Gabe and I speaking, because Brooks is a little bit too long to share. And no one else within our guild really does a lot of action scenes. At least there isn't a huge emphasis maybe on the work, but I can't speak for everybody. So yeah. First things first, Gabe will be the one speaking, and then I will be interjecting here and there to kind of make comments on each other's work, or maybe, you know, I don't know how Gabe wants to conduct his, because he'll be speaking first. But basically, with my excerpts at least, there are three individual excerpts. So after each part, then we can talk, or then I'll open up discussion to be like, what are your thoughts? Because the beauty about a creative writing group is that it's always nice hearing comments regularly, or as often as we can, right? But yeah, I guess enough about the intro. Gabe, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so little preamble. This is a bit from my current long-term project called Lemon Heart. For those who are listening who don't know what this book is about, it's about a teenage boy in a post-apocalyptic world who is a porn-obsessed chronic masturbator, and he gets his porno stolen from him by a rogue faction and basically goes on a journey of revenge to get his porn back. So the context for the scene, just to set you up, because it's sort of the way I have it, it sort of like gets in while it's happening. So the context for this scene is that the Wastelanders, which is the group that Dune is with, and the Appalachians, which is the group that took his porn, as he finds out, they've come into conflict around this massive USSR weapon and like trying to get the salvage from it. And to settle this, Dune is cornered the squadron leader inside a nearby building, while Fever and the others are handling the rest of them. And Dune distracts the leader. Coma, who is Fever's little brother, who has sort of like this thing where he's like sort of enamored with Dune as like the sort of icon. He's watching from above with a camera while this is all taking place.
Ooh, could I give a quick thing before we begin? I forgot to do this in the intro, but
Go for it.
For everyone listening, please do keep in mind that these are works in progress, so the final product may change based on editing and I guess ultimately where we send them off to. And like we had done with, I think, previous episodes, these are our ideas, so keep that in mind. And yeah.
Oh, and before I get started, this is like this section. If you're this, just a bit content warning. This section is super fucking gory. So if that's something that you're not down with, maybe Dean just put a timestamp to when I'm done talking about violence. Anyway, okay. So here we go. Lemon Heart, Wolpe's muttered under his breath as he glanced at Dune's stained shirt, which hung loose around his thin frame. Dune glared at Wolpe's, gritting his teeth and preparing for his next attack. Blood from the wounds on his cheek and arm dripped down his body. He could tell they weren't serious injuries. He could tell this man had simply been toying with them up to now. Wolpe's grip on his blades tightened, and although Dune struggled to get a read on him, he saw a subtle twitch in his mustache and a redness in his cheeks, like a quiet rage swelling up. You're the one who murdered Marlowe. And for what? A box of porn? Wolpe's asked Dune, as he slowly circled him. Not a box of porn, my box of porn. And he shot at me first. I'm not here for revenge, Lemon Heart. I never liked Marlowe much personally. He was a short-sighted man with an ill temper, but he was a man of Appalachia, no less. It doesn't sit well with me that Appalachian blood was spilled for such a stupid cause. What? That's all you Wastelanders do. I've seen it all before. You have no dreams, no ambitions. You just run around setting shit on fire, killing for scraps, fucking anything that moves. You know better than apes. Every time I meet one of you people, I ask what you fight for, and every time I get the same thing. Nothing but self-serving nonsense. I'd hoped you'd be different, Lemon Heart. I really did, after all I'd heard. but I guess you're just another wastelander. Wolpes mocked him. Koma held the camera steady as he watched from the rafters. He quieted his breaths and watched nervously, too scared to give himself away and yell at Dune that he was just winding him up. Dune glared at Wolpes, scowl across his face. Yeah? Is that right? Well, what about you? What are your dreams then? We were rebuilding the world we lost, Wolpes answered. His simple response infuriated Dune, and he wrapped his finger around the chainsaw's handle. All I've heard for the last fucking week is shit like that. A stupid cause, a fool's errand, a waste of time. That's all anyone's got to say. Well, you know what? If your dreams are so goddamn good, then come prove it, Dune challenged Wolpes. He grinned and yanked on the chainsaw's crank. The chainsaw revved up, and a low hum echoed through the room. You can go on and on about how stupid my dreams are, sit there thinking you're so special, your dreams make you so goddamn important. But if I beat you right here, right now, then all that means that my stupid dream of getting my porn back and jerking it till I keel over is just that much better than your idealistic bullshit. Dune shouted at Wolpes. Wolpes stopped circling around him and said, Et pereat mundus, Wolpes murmured, confirming Dune's suspicions about Ludens. Wolpes charged at him. Dune hoisted the chainsaw, blocking Wolpes' initial swing. Sparks flew through the air as metal grinded against metal. Dune shoved Wolpes back. Wolpes was quick on his feet, especially for his age. As Dune pushed him back, he stepped back himself and let Dune's momentum carry the chainsaw to the ground. He swung one of his swords forward, slashing Dune across the shoulder. Dune winced and swung the chainsaw at Wolpes' sword. Again, catching a vulnerable moment, Wolpes took a swing at Dune's leg, cutting his calf. Dune stepped back, bleeding a lot more than before. He could tell these were serious wounds, and he needed to finish this fast. Dune and Wolpes traded blows, sparks flying across the dark, rusty walls. Dune stepped onto a patch of dust, slightly gasped. Not noticing his change of behavior, Wolpes charged at Dune once more, but instead of blocking the blow, Dune kicked the dust up into Wolpes' face. It only blinded him for a moment, but it was enough to make him miss his attack, and gave Dune an opening. He swung the chainsaw forward, the metal grinding against the sword in Dune's left hand, before eviscerating the hand completely. The sword fell to the ground. Wolpes let out a blood-curdling scream, but as Dune raised the chainsaw for the killing blow, Wolpes kicked him in the chest, knocking him back. His hand destroyed, blood spilling across the floor. His fingers remained twisted and mangled. Wolpes looked at Dune, no longer a stoic rage, but a swelling madness in his eyes. He tightened his right hand around the remaining sword and stood back up. Are you out of your mind, old man? Back off, Dune threatened, disturbed by Wolpes' composure. Et pereat mundus. Shut up, Dune yelled, as Wolpes repeated the phrase and leapt at him again. Dune tried to block, but Wolpes' sword instead found its way between the handle of the chainsaw. He ripped the tool from Dune's hand and threw it across the room. Dune, in a panic, leapt to the side and picked Wolpes' stray sword off the ground. Wolpes, no longer making quick, precise movements, swung wildly as he repeated that phrase over and over, Et pereat mundus, et pereat mundus. Dune grabbed the errant sword and blocked Wolpes' wild strikes. You think a wastelander like you can handle a sword like that? Your barbaric grip could never even attempt it, Wolpes shouted, and spat blood as he did. He swung at Dune overhead, slicing through a cylindrical light over and shattering it, showering them in glass and sparks. You hear me, boy? That's my sword! Give it back! Wolpes screamed and swung against Dune's sword so hard he knocked it clean from his hands, and bashed Dune on the head with the hilt of his blade. Dune fell backwards and felt glass break under him as he did. He looked to his side and saw a jagged chunk of the cylindrical light bulb. Wolpes came at him and raised the sword above his head. You are nothing but meat, Dune heard repeated in his head. As quick as he could, Dune reeled back and kicked Wolpes in the crotch. Wolpes yelped and lost his footing. Dune grabbed the light bulb. Wolpes collapsed over him, and the sword barely grazing his head, and Dune drove the light bulb forward. For a moment, Wolpes wasn't sure what had happened. He felt something sharp, rough penetrate his neck. Dune winced, blood splattering on his head. Wolpes choked and reached for his sword again. Dune gritted his teeth and twisted the bulb before dragging it across Wolpes' neck. Wolpes collapsed, blood spilling from the gaping hole, pooling over the floor pulling on the floor beneath both of them. Dune shoved Wolpe's body off him, his face and shirt now drenched in blood. There we go. That's it.
Holy shit. Okay. So there are some things that I want to like talk about specifically, but Gabe, do you think you could upload what you put up onto our Discord?
Not like at this moment. I do want to make some changes because there was some stuff to even just reading that where I was like, wow, I don't like that. Don't like that. Want to change it. But yeah, I'll upload it tonight at one point.
Okay.
Unless you want me to upload it right now.
I mean, I prefer if you do that right now, just because, like, you know, just because if there's something that I wanted to highlight, then I'll bring it up for reference.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, if that's cool with you.
Second. Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Just give me a second.
But I guess initial impressions. Holy shit! That's a visceral fucking combat scene with your main protagonist, and I'm assuming like a main antagonist are they in there? It's like they were.
Oh, Wolpe's he's not a main antagonist. He's just like he shows up in this one chapter and he's like a guy who's there, but he's not a main antagonist at all.
Right. That's just one fucking thing, because like I love, like just hearing it, I love how very like anime-esque it sounds like, and like I think it's like evident through the dialogue that you put in, and you know we can expand. You can expand on that more with different excerpts on the next episode. But like I love the dialogue. It really adds to thing. It really adds to like the tension and the action, I think.
Well, thank you. Yeah, this was something I did want to talk about this episode. I feel like I've taken, and especially how I write action, I've tried to take a lot of cues from like anime and manga, because I feel like I don't know. I feel like especially if you're writing a book, like a solid way to do it is to like throw in a lot of like really big movements, like not really a lot of precise martial arts and stuff. Because I feel like I've tried to write like a martial arts into my story, and like that much movement doesn't really work. So I think sort of the way anime does it with like really big movements and like characters talking a lot and saying a lot of shit, and like that sort of JoJo thing where like there's almost like a mind game being played during the fight. That's sort of, I don't know if that last part came across in that fight, but that's something that I try to do with my action scenes, because I feel like that's just something that's worked for me.
Yeah. What anime inspired the fight scenes? Because like obviously like a lot of anime fight scenes are like huge and bombastic, but like were there anyone specifically?
I think I think Cowboy Bebop is probably a big inspiration for like how I write a lot of my fight scenes, especially in something like Lemon Heart, where it's more down to earth. I think like it really depends on what I'm writing, because like but I think something like Cowboy Bebop, where it's like that sort of precise but like big movements, and there's like sort of banter between the characters, but never like I can't think of like a specific anime that really inspired it more. I would say I can't really think of anything specifically.
That's all right.
I'm uploading it.
Yeah. I think like when you had, okay, so I'll pull up the doc, but I think a lot, like it was very, there was a lot of like anime influence, especially when you had said like big movements and banter. I think that's huge, especially when you're writing a book, for me personally, because like when it comes to writing, like it can be hard to kind of like visualize fight scenes, and we all have our own ways of doing them. I personally really like when they're very descriptive, because then like everyone can kind of imagine like throwing kicks and punches and whatever. But I think it's very telling of like when characters use weapons, or when characters use their bare hands or shit, or like when they don't even acknowledge to punch someone. And I'll get to that when I talk about my fight scenes. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think the argument I've always used for it whenever I've talked about like why I think anime is a good reference for like how to visualize a fight scene if you're writing it, is that like this is obviously not the case for everything, but like a lot of anime is written based on like comic books and light novels, and so like a lot of like the biggest, a lot of like the best anime fight scenes that like people will talk about are fight scenes that came from a written medium already. So that's all. That's like it's already like a you sort of like, especially with stuff like shonen, like Attack on Titan and stuff. You have a model for how to sort of do a fight scene within the context of like writing it, because you've seen how like a fight scene that's sort of in that way will play out like with like big movements and characters like deliberating and thinking over shit and like talk and like a lot of talking. I know that that's a thing that like anime gets shit on a lot, how like characters will be in the middle of like a fight and they'll just start like monologuing to each other.
Right.
And I know I personally know that Michelle does not like monologues at like in opportune moments. But as much of a trope as it is, I think it serves a purpose. Like it sort of, if you just have like a fight scene that's sort of in the way that a lot of big anime fight scenes are, it would, but without like any monologuing, without any deliberating, without like any fight filler, like the fights would be over extremely fast, and there would be almost like there'd be no fun to have in watching it. It would just be like they fight each other, and then one character wins, and we're just gonna skip over how they did it because that's filler, and we don't want filler. But I feel like unless it's a case where like you're a really good writer and you can really draw out a fight scene and like be creative with it, I'm not good enough to really draw out a fight scene completely on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only a few examples I've seen where it's like a fight scene is drawn out and it's just the fight scene. There's not really like banter or anything, but it's still really good.
Yeah.
I don't want to like get into examples, but like I say that's sort of an approach that's worked for me personally.
Mm-hmm. Before I comment on something else, Brooke, was there anything you wanted to chime in on?
It was nice hearing a story again. I miss classes. Especially Gabe's work. It was always so interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I think like as evident with Lemon Heart, and it's been a while since I've kind of kept in touch with the story. Like I'm up to date with everything that he's provided on our Discord, but like getting a hold of this is awesome. Like what I was going to comment on was like the banter. I love banter, especially when it comes to fight scenes, because then they can just be really, really creative. Like I love that through banter and through fight scenes you can explore a lot of character dynamics, and I think this is really telling. Like I think like the dialogue that Dune gives off when he's fighting, like it's fascinating. Like he definitely has a lot of character, like how you italicize some words when Dune is speaking, like not a box of porn, my box of porn. Love that. It's so fun. And I think like you do a pretty good job of like balancing everything. So like there's not thing like you don't suddenly cut away from the action to go into dialogue, which is like in movies at least, I hate when they do that. Like I hate when they like stop the action, do some banter, then go back to the action. Like I like it when it's being interplayed. If that makes any sense. Like they're mid sword fight and there they are like exchanging like taunts at each other, if that makes any sense. Like that's what I got with Dune and Volpes. Okay.
I am considering changing to just like Wolf, but I called him Wolpes because like it's sort of a reference. It's a dumb reference. I might change it.
I mean, it's all right. It's your work, right?
Yeah, but like if that's just an overly complicated name for a really small character, then
yeah. Anything else you wanted to chime in on when you or about this section? Like where does it kind of fit into the context of this story, or into the context of Lemon Heart? Like is this like Dune's first like boss fight or something?
This is like Dune's first like major encounter. This is okay. So this is like I would say chapter 5 or 6 in the story. So this is pretty early on. This is Dune's third encounter with Appalachia. So this is like I haven't really gotten to like what the actual plot of Lemon Heart is. I talk a lot about the porn things. I think it's a hilarious premise, but like
It's so funny.
um I a lot of the actual plot of Lemon Heart has like nothing to do with that. So it's not, yeah, this is Dune's third encounter with like this group that calls themselves the New Republic of Appalachia. They're essentially like a group who have started like rebuilding a kind of civilization. Like as far as the post-apocalyptic world goes, they're very like back to the ways that the old world was. They have like a functional city at their core. They have like a society that exists, and how they work in the world of post-apocalyptic wherever this is set. I haven't actually decided that yet. But they're basically sort of like expanding and fucking with other groups, like to try to get power and influence and expand their lands so that they can rebuild. And a lot of people are not for their way of doing it because they're colonialists.
Right. One other thing I wanted to note actually was your use of swearing. I really liked how you implemented it. I think especially because like through creative writing classes and probably through our own experience, like we shouldn't always, or our characters always shouldn't always be swearing. I think that's what I'm trying to say. But like I like how you give your characters room to swear in an otherwise really intense scene. Good job. But
I try not to use the word fuck too much, not because I'm like I'm like censorship or something, but I feel like especially this might be something I talk about more in the dialogue episode, but I feel like people use the word fuck a lot because like in real life people say the word fuck a lot. I say the word fuck a lot, but I feel like in a story like that shit that you can have like a lot of emphasis with saying that word at the right time, like, and if you overuse it, then it sort of loses its weight when you actually really want to use it.
Right.
Like, shit. There's that iconic scene in The Witcher where Geralt just goes, fuck, and like people fucking screenshotted that. That's a scene that went viral. It's just him saying the word fuck, but it's like it's an effective use of the word. So that's sort of like how I wanted to approach it, swearing like in stories with that kind of like mindset where it's like I want to use it as sparingly as possible so that it has an oomph.
Yeah, it's like make it count, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice sentence variety too. Like,
thank you.
Yeah, I think between how I write my action scenes, and we can get more into that when we get into my part. But like, yeah, I like your thing. I like your sentence variety. Like you explain shit's happening in pretty good detail, I think.
Yeah, that is another thing that I feel like a snag a lot of action in fiction runs into is like if you start over describing during the action, then like the action slows way the hell down. But if you under describe during the action, then people won't know what the fuck is going on. So it's a difficult balance to strike there.
Yeah. Is this like, would that be like, is this kind of writing like consistent throughout all of Lemon Heart then, or is it just still kind of something you're working on? Because you had said you had thrown this together.
This is sort of indicative of like how I've tried to go about writing the rest of it. There is another kind of fight scene. I wouldn't call it an action scene. It's more like a scuffle during a dialogue sequence. So that's not really a fight, but I've had like similar comments on some of those other scenes where like there's a lot of really good I've heard there's a lot of really good characterization for Dune when it's like in the middle of an intense moment and he just starts blurting out shit.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I mean, I guess if there's anything else you wanted to add, then, or if
I'm good.
Yeah,
let's move on to your thing.
All right, I'm excited to talk about mine. I always like talking about my action scenes because I realize that for my action scenes, they needed a lot of work because I always knew that I wanted to go into writing scenes with like very high action in them. So I've chosen 3 scenes that each highlights something in particular with not just the main or not just with the main protagonist Porter, but with like the world and how all of that interplays and stuff. So Gabe, do you have the document loaded up? Just so if you want, you can keep up, or you can keep along. Brooke, same thing with you if you want to access it. But yeah, Gabe, are you gonna pull up the document, or are you just gonna listen by ear?
I've got it up.
All right. So I'll be talking about Xeno now. The first action scene that I chose to talk about was one that I titled in the document Porter's Elbow. I'll basically talk more about it after I'm done reading the excerpt, but here goes nothing. To the right of her position, Porter hears a faint, strident whistle like a sparrow's call wisp through the air at the snap of a finger. She hears it again barely a second after the first. Terrace is clear, Magna reports, but the others heard it. Good. Porter rolls her shoulders. Peeking from cover, Porter watches the gates. The 2 gate guards are seen returning to their position after a brief meeting with another pair of guards. Each unsheathing a black T-handle club, the 2 now stay close to the gates. The guard on the right, wearing the black cap, activates the locking system to the gates with something that he tucks into one of the leather pouches on his belt. Porter searches the area for something to lure the 2 to her. Loose pebbles, stacks of unused clay bricks, empty soda cans, and empty bottles of booze lay in her immediate area to use. From there, they should hear glass shattering. She picks up a glass bottle and peeks from cover one last time. She tosses it in the direction of the guards. The bottle slams onto the pavement with an audible crash, shattering into dozens of pieces. Did they hear that? Porter calls Magna, staying silent by whispering. Yep, Magna answers. They're heading your way. Hope you know what you're doing. Throwing her hood on, she takes a few steps back to the shadows, keeping her back to the wall. She unsheaths one of her batons, squeezing on all 4 buttons to trigger it. Controlling her breathing, she watches the shadows of the 2 guards approaching the alley. The one with the cap leads, turning his left to investigate. The other guard breaks away, heading to Porter's position. He squints, trying to see if there's anything in the shadows. Porter winds her arm up. Emerging from cover, a swift swing of her baton strikes the guard's exposed head. The blow knocks him out cold, the body dropping to the concrete in a crashing thud. She retrieves the guard's T-baton on the ground, hurling it towards the last guard. The weapon's heavy plastic whips the man's head back, stunning him and breaking his nose. Porter winds her arm up again, targeting the man's temple. So, the reason why I call it why I've called this one Porter's Elbow is because Porter has a knockout elbow. And for the context of the scene, which I probably should have led with, but basically, Porter and Magna are trying to break into the Temple of Marnarwe, which is their key destination, and they had to deal with a couple of guards. So, not only, I think, does this show off Porter's killer or knockout elbow, but it also shows the teamwork with Porter and Magna, that they cooperate and they communicate as frequently as they can, even under very tense situations. The scene starts with Magna firing off a pair of arrows because she is the archer of the story, and from there it shows Porter being very calculated, or hopefully being very calculated with her attacks. Like, she considers the environment around her and uses it to her advantage. So what do you guys think?
I mean, yeah, I thought that was really fucking good. I like everything that you were saying about my piece. I kind of want to say here, like, there's like this has less dialogue, obviously, which is, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just an observation, and I do like that. This is like obviously a more tense sequence, but yeah, I like the action. It's very tight. It's very snappy. very like it's got a rhythm to it. It's really good.
Cool. Thanks. Brooke, anything?
Yeah, echoed.
Cool. So, also, I think before moving on to my other excerpt, this first action scene takes place relatively early on in the story. Like, I think it's probably the first action scene, really, where Porter and Magna both get very physical. So there's plenty of build-up leading up to it. And this is also at a point where Porter and Magna's, or I guess Porter's story is still very slowly unraveling. So I'm trying not to reveal too much. But with the next action scene, actually, that reveals quite a lot. And this one I've called Magic in Action. So not only is this an action scene, but it's also showing off the magic system that I talked about in my previous episode, or in season 2 of our magic systems episode. So for some initial context, Porter and Magna have found the Temple of Linnea, which is their key destination since the start of the book, really, because Porter has had a glowing amulet that supposedly the goddess Linnea has been trying to contact her with, and the whole purpose of the amulet is to go to any statue of the god that is trying to talk to them, and basically put the amulet on the statue and hear their message. Most of the time that's a very important message. Like, you don't really want to miss it. But with Linnea, for storyline reasons, it was kind of difficult getting there, because the last temple to Linnea is deep underground, beneath the Temple of Bernarwe, because apostasy. It's a terrible explanation, but like, who knows? Maybe if you're listening to this, the book would hopefully have already been out. Hopefully. But yeah. With this scene, like I said, it goes over the magic system that I talked about, specifically the Zerat, or Darrow's lightning, which is just lightning. But it also introduces the other magic systems, I think, because I briefly mentioned them everything leading up to this, but I don't really introduce them as much as I do here. So let's just get started. A hulking fiend of a man stands near the entrance of the ravine, his arms tucked behind his back. He stands at the center between two others, all three of them in those black and green coats and white masks covering half the face. Except for the man in the middle. No, he was different, wearing a full face mask whiter than snow, parts of it covered by thick, greasy locks. Accented with an exposed set of deep black bags around the eyes and a wicked, twisting smile exposing a pair of silver canines. Gods, is it even a mask? That sleeve of armor on his right arm hums with a strange charcoal black fog. Magic. Unknown magic. Between the 5 arcanic schools, the 5 fuses, and the Mistana, the magic of the gods, Porter's never seen a magic system like that. Porter sheaths one of her batons. Against her judgment, she reaches into her pocket for her mom's Ord ring. An anxious shiver shakes her spine. They're letting her do it. Why aren't they attacking yet? The fiend takes his locks of hair and slicks it back, meeting Porter's dishonest bravery with cold, haunting rubies for eyes. As he stares, Porter's thumb grazes against the engraved bolts on the ring. If any of them move, Porter murmurs to Magna, "Turn around and run. Don't look back. I'll be right behind you." The fiend steps forward. Porter and Magna take off a heartbeat after. From behind them, a vicious clap of thunder rumbles the cave. A familiar clap of thunder, and a tonal bolt. Porter swivels on her heels, striking her mom's ring like a match. A surge of gold lightning sparks from the engraved bolts, the power of the arcanic rushing through both arms. She raises both fists, channeling the energy to create an Arma shield. But she doesn't even blink before a black bolt of lightning hisses through the air with dangerous speed. It collides with the Arma just as it forms. The Arma shatters. The recoil of the shield's destruction sends Porter across the courtyard. She slams onto a bare slab of mossy concrete a few steps shy from the temple's entrance. Quarter! Magna runs up to Porter, her voice trembling. Porter manages to sit up on her own, her nails digging into her palms. She takes in a deep inhale, cursing on her exhale. A black Atono bolt, Porter thinks, her heart racing. A black palum. Hoy, can you get up? Magna asks. Yeah, Porter murmurs, rising to her feet. She lifts a portion of her top, checking the Guardian's hex. Gods. The last of the hex's ivory lightning fizzles. She's vulnerable. So, that's it for that section. For some context, or for some, I guess to explain a few things, like we had talked about more in the magic system episode, there are 5 arcanics. There's 5 fuses, so basically combining 2 of the main 5 arcanics and the Mistan and the magic of the gods. How activating powers work, at least for Darrow's lightning, is it is conducted through a ring, or the conduit. There are engraved bolts in it, which you strike like a match, which is similar to, I think, what they do in Attack on Titan. I don't remember who has a ring with like a little spike on it, but basically they strike that and then they become a Titan. It's similar to this, where they strike the ring and power rushes through them. It's almost like you're generating static electricity in a way.
Yeah.
The hulking fiend of a man, as I've named the fiend here, but I'll probably change that because copyright reasons. He is part of the main antagonists, which I'll explain later in the book, but as well, the armor shield is basically just a electrified shield. And as a refresher from the Magic Systems episode as well, palums are basically the power levels, and there's only 4 known up until this point. There was blue or cerulean for novices, gold for, I guess, intermediate people. So basically, like, I don't know the proper designation for that, but like for intermediate learners of the arcanic or the respective arcanic, there's red for basically masters, and then there's white, which is basically the disciples, which is the highest echelon for learning magic. So to have one beyond that is scary. And the scene ends with more mystery surrounding that black palum, because normally it would take a lot to fizzle out a Guardian's Hex, which is basically like an anti-magic thing. But this one, it didn't even strike Porter directly. It just clashed with the shield and it destroyed the shield, but it still managed to erase the Guardian's Hex, which was protecting Porter up until now. So it's like, ooh, mystery. But yeah, what did you guys think on that scene?
Yeah, I thought that one slaps too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, there's a lot more magic stuff going on in here, and I like that. There's a lot of magic stuff. I'm not like, I'm gonna have to like reread some of what you've sent of Xeno, because I'm like, some of the stuff I had to be like, okay, I had to like sort of remember like what we talked about in the Magic System episode. But I will say, what I will say is that I like how you title a lot of your magic stuff in terms of like an action scene, because a lot of it is just like obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Like you talk about an Arma, and like I don't know immediately, I can't remember immediately what an Arma is, but I see the word Arma and I'm like, armor. It just clicks in my head. Or like I see the word bolt and I'm like, yeah, it's a fucking bolt. It just clicks in my head. And I mean, so that's really solid. I mean, that's not really an action thing. That's more like just a world building and magic system thing. But I think that's a really solid naming schemes, because like I can't remember what video H Bomber guy talked about this in, but he was talking about how like in fantasy it's a lot easier to like sort of identify uh certain things in fantasy because like they're familiar concepts. Oh, it was in the Ruby episode. He was talking about Ruby's magic system and how it's like really weird and poorly explained, and how like there's a lot of stuff that's just sort of left there, but it's not explained, and it's weird words and stuff. But like how in Lord of the Rings, like you don't really need to be explained what the ring is. Like they say it's a ring of power, and we know what rings are and we know what power is, so it's like we could just make the connection. It's a ring of power. Like it's a lot harder to explain like what the Silmarils are. So I think that's the example he used in the videos. That's what I'm going to use now. It's like I think this is a good example of like of that you've given like a lot of these things like solid naming schemes, so I can look at them and I can be like, okay, I can grasp what this is without it being like explicitly told to me like every single time.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I'm glad that that's coming across really well because that was my intention.
Yeah.
Because I think, like I had mentioned in the Magic Systems episode, I have never really built a magic system this complex before. And as the story is progressing, like this action scene in particular happens a lot, or like I think within one of the earliest pivotal moments of the story. And I'll get to said pivotal moment in a bit, but when introducing concepts such as spells, I really needed to make sure that it was all flowing correctly. I didn't need to. Basically, I didn't want to have the kind of energy with my story where I needed an extra footnote to explain what the hell this is. Like, I was hoping that naming convention wise, like you had said, it was relatively easy to pick up and understand immediately. So it's good to hear that.
That's good.
Yeah. You know what? I'll save some of my more, or I'll save some of my questions for the end actually, because like I said, I had 3 different excerpts. Brooke, anything to add? I know I keep picking on you for this, but like,
Yeah, I'm here for commentary. I should comment more. It was very vivid imagery. Something about mossy cement just tickles me happy. I don't know why I like mossy cement so much.
yeah, it's certain environments, right? Like, I think for me, I'm a sucker for snowy environments, but that's, I guess, a whole other conversation.
Snow kink. Sorry.
Stop it. So we're getting over to the last of my excerpts. This one I think needs a little bit more explanation going into it, so bear that in mind. But this one I titled "Becoming a Mystic." So for the story, the reason why Linnea was trying to contact Porter was because they're going after a very similar unbeknownst to them, at this point in the story, they're going after a very similar enemy. And because they are after the same enemy, Linnea has taken it upon herself to anoint Porter as a mystic, which, if I haven't already said in previous episodes, being the mystic to a god means inheriting their powers in a way, but it also means sharing their consciousness. So not only can Porter hear Linnea in her head, but also she can manifest a living being, a living representation of the goddess. So basically, through magic, this is where the scene is being to catch everyone up to speed. The scene is taking place outside of near a cabin in the woods, in a clearing, some feet away from said cabin, and basically it's like the training sequence. This is like still very early on in the story, so before the climax, and it's where Porter as the mystic to Linnea, basically Porter is now able to get her powers. These are known as the Shays, which are part of the Mistana magic system, so the magic system of the gods, and that means they're unique abilities to each mystic. They're not very common compared to, they're not just a magical shield or magical attacks. Like, they're tailor-made specifically for the kind of person that they are, or the kind of person that the mystic is. So this training sequence is meant for Linnea to determine what kind of a fighter Porter is, and how just which shays she'll be able to use in battle that'll be able to play to Porter's strengths, basically. This takes place, or part of it takes place near the end of a chapter, and then the last little bit takes place at the beginning of a chapter. And I think that's it for context. Do you guys have enough to work with? Or is there anything else I need to explain?
No, I think I'm good. I'm good to go.
That's fine.
All right. Then let's discuss action scene 3, Becoming a Mystic. When you're ready, recite the following. Musan muser, mistana ambulare. The binding words Porter remembers from the Mist comics. I am that I am, walking under the gods' light. Linnea continues. The Lennox from your arms will be blinding, and you will feel a burning unlike anything you've ever felt. Endure what comes. Be strong, understand? Porter nods. She takes in a final breath before she recites the binding words. Musan muser, blinding Lennox light roars from her arms, but Porter stands her ground. Mistana ambulare. Porter digs her heels into the ground. True to Linnea's word, the blood in Porter's fingers. It was boiling. Porter gnaws on her bottom lip as the burning climbs up her arms at an unbearable pace. Reaching her shoulders, Porter flinches, breaking her composure. At her chest, she groans. At her stomach, she starts cursing. The burning now roaring down to her legs, Porter's arms flail about, the rest of her body soon following its lead. Once the pain reaches the tips of her toes, Porter nearly buckles in half as it all shoots up to her head before she could feel it. Porter wakes the forest with a blood-curdling scream before she falls to her hands and knees. Porter heaves in heavy gulps of air, her hands wrenching on the grass underneath the snow. She hawks up and spits something out, unsure and uncaring if it's phlegm or blood. With her eyes closed, she curses again. Shit, Porter murmurs, gulping down more air. Holy shit. She opens her eyes with barely a warning before she's partially blinded by the Lennox peeking from within her jacket. Rolling up her sleeves, every part of her tattoos is alit with light, the different purples, yellows, and whites matching the beat of her heart. Raising her arms close to her, she notices a strange amethyst and white and mauve hue shining onto her palms, but this light isn't coming from the tattoos. Gazing onto her palm, she notices the hue is following wherever she looks. She gasps. This light is coming from her own eyes, but she still sees everything in full color, including the approaching goddess. Gods, Porter says as she gets up, collecting her strength. That was... Whoa. The arms, eyes, and tattoos of Linnea's echo are glowing too. Excellent, love, Linnea says, bowing her head in respect. The mystics before you were noisier when the burning raced across their body. Makes sense, Porter says. Porter, realigning her posture, hawks out a ball of spit. Just tell me I don't have to ever go through that again. No, the goddess snorts. Would you like some time to adjust? No. Porter addresses her with a confident tone. I'm ready. Linnea shows a coy half grin in response, lowering Porter's guard. That grin's a near reflection of my own, Porter thinks. Very well, Linnea says, approaching Porter. Before every mystic learns their shays, they must first tap into this state, the Armis, to give the Mistana permission to course through you and become what you need it to be. While you won't always need to be in the state to use your shays, the Armis will bring out the best in it. Linnea stops about an arm's length from Porter. But that's for later. Right now, the armist is the only kind of armor that'll protect you, that'll keep you safe. The goddess cocks her head. Magna, arm your bow. Porter looks at Magna. You're gonna have Magna fire at me. She doesn't miss. The goddess raises her hand to slap Porter across the face. Porter barely ducks. Holy... Porter gasps. Why'd you... Wait. Are we going to... Yes, we are. Linnea balls up both fists and strikes Porter's abdomen. Each of them connects, but before the pain registers through her body, an open palm slams against Porter's chest, propelling her into the forest. She slams onto a thick pine tree spine first. All at once, the constricting pain from her stomach and now her back finally rushes through her as she drops onto the ground. Her body half buried in the snow, Porter barely gets a curse in before she's gasping for air again. Get up, Linnea scorns, her voice ringing in Porter's ears. Sucking in a gulp of air, she rises to her feet, using the tree to keep balance. Should the Ilimus not grant you mercy, then you must get up, Porter. She reaches for her weapons just as the goddess says, or is that all a former ace of the Fiori can take? A storm brews inside Porter. In mere seconds, Porter's glowing eyes twinge and her shoulders tense up. If the goddess herself dare state her former title like that, if she dares raise a metal bar to the thunder, a cold, seething frown now rests on Porter's face. Fine. And that's action scene 3.
Nice.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, guys, before I expand on it?
I don't think I have any questions.
Any comments?
This is something that I was sort of, I was going to talk about the last one. I forgot I was going to talk about. I like how with we were talking about anime shit before, and like it's sort of the same thing here, but like more like shonen-y, where like characters will just go fucking flying, and that shit's really good too. Like I mean, I'll just repeat what I was saying earlier. I think like a lot of anime is a good model for like fictional action writing, and like there's like the more like realistic thing. Realistic is a strong word for a chainsaw sword fight, but like, you know what I mean, like less like magic stuff going on there. But then I think in this there's like that's like more like stuff like Naruto and like My Hero, where like people will send each other flying through like trees and shit, and that shit's really good too. And it's all really well described here.
Thanks. As a question for both of you, Brooke, if you're still there, how is it introducing concepts? Because I know that there were a lot of terms being thrown around there, but like, how is it like, did you feel like the introduction was natural, or did it flow well with the scene? Because if it was taking away from the scene a little bit, then I might have to work on that.
See, I don't judge much on that when it's like a small excerpt, because it's like obviously we get more with the full picture. So, all good. Definitely makes it sound very built world, built different.
Fair. Gabe, anything to add on to that? Because like I personally I wouldn't want the section to be too lore dumpy.
Oh no, I don't feel like it's too lore dumpy. I feel like it's like, I mean, there's lore. I feel like it's an appropriate amount of lore, and like, well, I mean, yeah, it's sort of what Brooke was saying. If I'm reading this like with the full context, that's a lot more. That's a lot easier to judge, I think, because like stuff is only lore dumpy in the context of like the rest of the story. Like if I'm reading a book and like a lore dump happens, I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. But like if it's the first I'm hearing of this, like okay, like here's what I'll say. Like if this is not the first time these concepts have been introduced, then like Yeah, that might be a little lore dumpy because but that's getting into territory of like when you of not really lore dump, but like redundancy almost. But like again, I'm not saying that is a thing. I'm saying like that's like, but that's a thing I'm gonna be cautious for. But I think if you're this scene on its own, as far as I'm concerned, this is not like super lore dumpy.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that. It's just that like, cause I think like when it comes to lore dumping, and I think we can entertain that a little bit. I think when it comes to action scenes, that's probably not the place for it. Like I think writing stories for me has always kind of been broken down into three main I don't want to say three main parts because there's obviously more to that, but like how or three main balance points, I guess. Exposition, action, and dialogue. And as we will expand more in dialogue thing, but basically when it comes to exposition and action, my thing is to make sure that all of it flows and I don't have a clear section where it's like, oh, this is obviously a lore dump, because like I've been notorious of that. Like I've kind of stopped action in between to make sure that like, oh, okay, here's an explanation for everybody, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I've been trying to like interweave details as much as possible into dialogue and into action scenes, right? Because to talk about the excerpt a little bit, like I had said before, this is a scene where Porter is gaining her powers as a mystic. So I was hoping that, you know, just within the first few, or just within introducing the binding words, like I didn't want to have a whole section dedicate, or I didn't want to have a whole paragraph dedicated to explaining what the binding words were, how many people were saying it before them, how, like, what specifically does each word mean. Like I wanted to make sure it was all natural and that it didn't interrupt the flow of the scene, I guess. Because if it did, I would hate myself a lot more than I already do. But like, it's good that you guys didn't bring that up, and I'm glad that like it's flowing naturally. And that's like, if you guys can tell, like I've been trying to do that consistently with a lot of the action scenes that I've brought up. Like I don't or I try and not spend too much time focusing on, I think in the first action scene, Porter's calculation and cleverness. Like I don't want to obviously state it. I want it to be evident through the motion, right? And that's more showing and not telling. With the action scene 2, or with action scene number 2, when it's introducing the magic system, I wanted to make sure that I don't ever try and do enough side tangents. Like I mentioned side tangents when it comes, or I mentioned like a little bit of an off thing when it comes to between the 5 arcanic schools, the 5 fuses, and the Mistana, the magic of the gods. I could have easily fallen into the trap of like explaining what each of them were, but you know, I've decided to write in how that's still significant to the story, right? So it's like not really getting into the trap, but like kind of backing away from it. And I'm not saying that like my writing style is perfect by any means, but I'm just saying that this has been working for me, and I'm glad that introducing concepts, especially during fight scenes where I personally think that like it should really only be focusing on action, like keep lore dumping to a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've talked about this on the podcast before. Like, I don't think there's not like a set one perfect writing style. It's like a play it by ear thing. Like if you're writing a story and like you're working on something and like that works for you, then like, I mean, with obviously there's like Dunning Kruger. Like if you write something and someone's like, this is like this, you need to change this, then yeah, it takes some time to like work on yourself. But if you're writing something and you think it's good and other people like it, then like I mean, you can't really get like much better than that. There's no like objective. I mean, there's lots of people who are like, oh, this is like fucking Don Quixote or some shit. But like, there's no like one perfect. It's an art form.
Right.
It's you're doing painting and shit. You're a monkey on a typewriter. You're just slamming numbers, and sometimes, if it works for you, that's our baby.
Truer words couldn't have been said. Yeah, you're right. I think, yeah, it's just reflecting on like how I used to like write action scenes. I think particularly fight scenes where action scenes and fight scenes are kind of two different things. Like you can very broadly categorize what an action scene is, but when it comes to fight scenes, I was very, very unbalanced. Like either section, or it's either like it's either characters were talking a little bit too much before actually fighting, or like when they were talking, they were just like kind of standing around waiting to attack, like an old school RPG. And I'm like, why? So I think, yeah, for me, how writing action scenes has been and will be going forward is to try to keep them tight and precise, while also, when possible, explaining a little bit more. Because action scene number 3, like this, the chapter that's it's part of, and the chapter that it starts preceding it, follows a lot of action and trying to interplay that with lore dumping. And I can probably read that off when it comes to or when we get to the dialogue episode, because I think that involves, or there's a lot more dialogue than action. But like basically, when it comes to writing action scenes, my whole thing is to, especially when I'm introducing concepts like this in chapters where it's very action heavy, like I don't want to ever distract anyone with potential lore information that is like way too much to comprehend at one time, because like characters are fighting. If that makes any sense? Like just let them fight. And if I'm going to be explaining what's happening, or like what powers they're going to be using, or however, then I'll try to, my goal is to make sure that it's all interweaving, right? And making sure that it flows nicely into each other, and it's not very clearly a lore dump, or very clearly an I'll fuck you up kind of thing. Like I just want to make sure it all flows well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all I really need to share on that. I mean, I can always share more fight scenes, because like Xeno is currently 21 chapters in, and I've shared snippets of like the 3 big fight scenes so far. I have one, without going too much into spoilers, that like takes place in like, I'm really excited to talk about, or I'm really excited to like write this next big fight scene. It's gonna be fun. But yeah, so far, I guess if I haven't already repeated myself so far, like introducing concepts during a fight scene is a new thing for me, and I'm a little bit worried as to if it's all translating well. But I mean, I haven't heard many negative critiques so far from you guys, so yeah. Any final thoughts? Because I think we can kind of end it here, the episode.
Oh, the episode.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I talked a lot about like how anime is like a model, but like again, it's the thing where it's like that's what works for me. If you have a way, if you're like working on something and you have a way of writing action, I think the best way to write action is not like to model it after like any one specific fight scene, or like to model it after a way of writing fight scenes, but like with anything else, it's balance. You got to have a balance. You get a good balance. You get good writing. You get good words. Good book. Good.
You always have such a way with words, Gabe.
I am an English major.
Yeah. Brooke, any final things? Because we haven't gotten to talk about any of your fight scene or like any of your action scenes, but like in your own process, like what is something that you like to kind of account for?
Oh, well. Oh, okay. Well, I actually had like 2 reasons for not speaking tonight. It was like one, even though that one passage was really long and it's actually like 3,400 words now or something like that. I just feel like there's not actually action in it. Like, I don't really write that much action, even though there's supposed to be action in my stories. Like, action is hard. Making things move fast and still be comprehensible and like adrenaline-y, it's hard. It's really hard to do. All I can say is, honestly, those are the scenes that I go back to like the most for revision. Is like I need to make sure that everything is clear. There's something about I just saw a tip. Yes, that's what those are called. A writing tip the other day that was like, if you're gonna have a fight scene in a room, you have to describe that room before you do the fight. And I was like, oh, that is true. I haven't been doing that, so I need to start doing that. And I remember in the first creative writing class, I brought a piece that did sort of have like a fight-ish scene, action-y scene, and I brought it in and everyone was like, this was an action scene? I was like, yeah? And they're like, it's not fast enough. I was like, oh, okay. So basically, word less, word precise. You need to be word precise. Make it clear, fast.
Word less, word precise.
Yeah. Yes, you have to precise word. And it makes scene go zoom and things go wow and they're good, you know? You know?
I got you.
Yeah.
I've been getting better at trying to do the precise, but you can also draw out fight scenes by having like longer bits of more words.
Mm-hmm. I think like okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brooke.
Okay.
Word less, word precise. I need to get that tattooed on my arm. But I mean, I guess for my final thoughts on writing fight scenes, there are a couple things. On pacing, actually, that is, I think, huge because with dialogue, you can kind of take as much time as you want. Like, you obviously don't want to have like just a conversation of 2 people standing there, but like you can bring out so much emotion and so much plot through dialogue. With world building, I think it's kind of the same thing where you can take a little bit longer than that because especially in a fantasy setting, you have to introduce or you have to spend some time talking about the concepts that you talk about. Otherwise, people are going to be like, what the fuck is going on? But with action scenes, I think they should always, or not always, but like they should frequently have a faster pace set in mind because depending on what shit's happening, like you don't want that to take forever. Otherwise, you're gonna lose the momentum, right? And I think specifically when it comes to fight scenes, and this is kind of a weird side tangent, but for me, if not for anime fight scenes, if not for anime scenes, I think professional wrestling does a good job with like the whole choreographing fights. I think in a way, it's, you know, if you ignore like the campiness that is professional wrestling, a lot of the moves that they perform on each other is pretty cool. Like I think the elbow bash that Porter's knockout elbow, that is synonymous with a lot of professional wrestlers who use that to gain the upper hand in their match. And as well, I've written how certain professional wrestlers are into certain story or into certain characters. So like Porter, while very flexible and nimble, is also kind of staying on the ground. But I can imagine Magna being like very up in the air, using her kicks a lot more, and that's even if she decides to do melee combat because she's much better at range, but I guess that's a whole other side thing. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of creativity you can draw out in fight scenes and action scenes in general. It just depends on, like Gabe had said, how your style works. Like if you want to introduce some bits of your lore in between there, cool. Just don't take up too much time in it personally. And I say that more as a cautionary thing for me, but like, you know, if you're going to have two characters fight, don't just have them like staring at each other for like a good maybe 3-5 minutes, and then fucking one of them just samurai slashes and then it's all over. Like, what? Where was the build up? Or like, where was the suspense? I'm going on nothing. I'm going on a tangent. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
This is a podcast. Tangent City, baby.
I need to on a tangent about tangents. I wonder how many tangents we've gotten on for like for 3 seasons of this podcast, and I need to just compile them into like, here's everything we were not supposed to be talking about at this current moment.
I mean, it's a podcast. It's the idea.
Podcast, yeah. And you know, as a podcast for creative writers, we like sharing our ideas. But I think overall, because it was only really Gabe and I who was speaking tonight, we'll have a lot more people to share ideas with, or you know, to share their excerpts with when it comes to dialogue, because dialogue, like, a lot more people do that between different genres, and it's different for everybody. But until then, I think let's call it for tonight's episode. So yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. You can find all of us individually down in the description below, as well as collectively as the Ink Guild. Couple announcements actually. We're on TikTok, so follow us at the Ink Guild on TikTok. And also we have a Wix site up now, which is basically showing or showcasing everything that we've all been up to so far, as well as introducing all of us a little bit. So you get to read up on our bios, how long we've been writers, what we specialize in, what we like to read. And as well, you can also find all the content that we've been working on pretty much since this project started back in May. So always tune in on that. But I guess as a final segment, why don't we take, I guess if Gabe, if you've still got my copy loaded up, how about I share some of my favorite lines from your piece and you share some of your favorite lines from mine? Okay, and then Brooke, she can share some of her favorite lines from both.
Okay.
So I think
You're gonna make me download things?
Do you have a good memory?
No.
All right. Well then,
I'm going to skip out on this portion because I don't want to download things.
Okay. All right. Well then, I guess Brooke will be Brooke and do her own thing for now. I think I'll start then with some of my favorite lines. I love "not a box of porn, my box of porn," and he shot at me first. That's hilarious. I love that. I like the Latin kind of it, like in between certain sections, like that breaks up a lot of the dialogue nicely. And I'd like to hear why you decided to put in Latin when you talk about it in dialogue, if you decide to talk about this.
There is actually a plot reason for that phrase. That phrase pops up a couple times. Sorry, there's a plot reason.
Mm-hmm. I like the use of a chainsaw as a weapon. I think maybe it's because of Chainsaw Man, but I can't really confirm that. But I love the chainsaw, especially this line. He swung the chainsaw forward, the metal grinding against the wood, and I can't say that character's name, and that's my own fault. But like in his left hand before eviscerating the hand completely. Oh, that's nice gore. I like that. I think "you are nothing but meat" is a nice italicized sentence on its own, and I like that it's on its own. And
that's another recurring thing that I can't totally explain because spoiler button, but like, yeah, there's a couple recurring elements that happen in like early chapters that get like that will be explained but are not explained yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are some of my favorite lines in Lemon Heart.
I like All right, in the second action scenes, I like an anxious shiver shakes her spine. They're letting her do it. Why aren't they attacking it? That's good tension building, I think. Oh yeah, shit. Before that, I love the description of the fucking dude. The dude's crazy looking face, the mask. If it's a mask, I fucking love that shit. Especially like his little crazy Cheshire cat smile. I'm not sure like how you pictured that in your head, but I was picturing that with the total like Cheshire grin going on there with his crazy fucking snarl face. Yeah, I was that I made like I had the total vision in my head of like this dude in this crazy face mask with like a crazy mouth going on, and like yeah, that was I dug that a lot. And then Porter wakes the forest with a blood curdling scream before she falls to her hands and knees. That was good. That was a good one. And yeah.
Cool. All right. I think that's it then. Granted, for only really 2 different stories, I was expecting it to be a lot shorter than our typical, I guess, 2-hour episodes at this rate. Like, holy shit, we've had so many 2-hour episodes for season 3 that is like crazy. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening in. Tune in, I guess. So this episode is going up on Wednesday, but tune in on Friday for the final episode of season 3 and our dialogue episode, where hopefully we'll have more people sharing their dialogue. I don't know how better else to explain it, but yeah. Tune in also for Friday, because like I said, it is the final episode of season 3 and it'll be sweet. Just a nice thing. Like, I know we didn't do a check-in, but I want to do something before the actual episode starts on season 3. It's just a thing. I'm going on another tangent, but anyway, thanks everybody for listening in. Have a good night, everybody.